In his past life, as soon as Mi Xiaoxiao buried his parents, he was sent to his brother-in-law's bed by his malicious grandmother with a bowl of overpowering medicine, sugar water, and eggs. He wanted to give birth to his infertile cousin. Later, he was sold by his cousin to a family of 3 single brothers in a mountain ditch as their daughter-in-law, living a life more than death. She swore that she would seek revenge. Half a year later, God's eyes grew and she was granted the precious space artifact of the world. She finally had the opportunity to eliminate her enemies one by one. However, she is dirty and no longer worthy of the man who loves her deeply. She is shy to see him. So, the vengeful Mi Xiaoxiao closed her eyes and jumped into the river. Unexpectedly, when I opened my eyes again, I was reborn before everything had even started. In this life, she worked hard to turn the tide, changed the tragedy of her parents' tragic death, then abused the scum, fought monsters, upgraded, and found that man to start a new relationship. Yan Junwei's face turned black, and as he reached out his hand, the little girl on the wall said, "Are you just in love? Don't want to get married?" Mi Xiaoxiao sneered. "Get married, definitely get married. A lifetime of a pair, never regretting." Keywords of the novel. Rebirth 80, Best Remarriage Without Pop-Ups, Rebirth 80, Best Remarriage Complete Collection Download, Rebirth 80, Best Remarriage Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. Rebirth. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Rebirth, Lost Money Goods. Dare to compete with Hongying for work. I'll beat you to death. The thick and long wooden stick landed on the thin and weak girl with a thud. Mi Xiaoxiao only feels a lot of pain on her body. Didn't she jump into the river and die? Is it difficult to kill too many people and end up in 18 layers of hell? That's not a loss either. At least avenged it. Go to hell, then go to hell. Mi Xiaoxiao is satisfied and wants to sleep. However, the familiar voice of Mrs. Mi rang out again. If you're a despicable person, you deserve to go to the countryside to farm, and if you want to work in the city, you have a dream. Not right. Mi Xiaoxiao quickly opened her eyes. As she watched the wooden stick fall down again, she quickly reached out and grabbed Mrs. Mi's wrist. Upon seeing this, Mrs. Mi became even more angry and cursed viciously, "Mi Xiaoxiao, do you dare to resist? What a reversal. You two of you, a broom star who occupies a nest and doesn't lay eggs, have made my son a destitute, someone who eats from the inside out and wants to snatch the job of my obedient granddaughter. You two despicable hooves, shameless things, I'm sorry. This scene is so familiar." Mi Xiaoxiao remembers clearly that this year, both she and her cousin had just turned 16. According to the street regulations, anyone who turned 16 without a job had to go to the countryside. Her grandmother was reluctant for her cousin to go to the countryside, so she forced her mother to pass on the job to her cousin. Mom disagrees. She didn't agree either. She wanted to inherit her mother's job, but when her grandmother found out, she beat her up. Grandma has 3 sons, and her father is the third. In theory, the youngest son, eldest grandson, and grandmother's lifeline should be the most favored one, but in the Mi family, the opposite is true. Her father is the least favored one. At the age of 5, she went to the coal yard to pick up coal slag to earn a living, and at 10, she covered all household chores. The tuition for elementary and middle school was earned by her father by picking up coal slag early in the morning and working in the dark. In the high school entrance exam, her father ranked first in the whole school. Her grandmother played around and refused to let her father continue his studies, forcing him to drop out of school and work part-time to earn money to support his uncle and uncle who were last in the exam. Later, it was my grandfather who couldn't bear it and asked an old friend to teach him how to drive. After Dad learned it, coincidentally the steel factory hired a driver and he was admitted. With a job, Grandpa stepped forward and married his father. I thought that after my father had a job and a wife, he would endure hardships. However, my grandmother intensified her oppression of my father, and along with my mother, she was also bullied by my grandmother. After her grandfather passed away due to serious illness, Mrs. Mi became even more reckless and demanded that her parents pay their full annual salary and do all household chores. If things didn't go well, she would go to the entrance of the steel and textile factory to cry and be unfilial. This time, for the sake of my cousin, my grandmother came up with the idea of working in my mother's textile factory and forced her to pass on the work to my cousin, but my mother refused to agree. Later, when my mother was forced to do nothing, she threatened my grandmother with my uncle stealing coal from the coal yard, and my grandmother had to give up. Turning around, Grandma went to force Dad again, forcing him to exchange a job as a state-owned restaurant waiter for his cousin with a life-saving gesture. After getting a job, my cousin resented my mother's threat to her grandmother, so she teamed up with her grandmother and secretly reported her name to go to the countryside. In her third year in the countryside, the textile factory caught fire and her mother was burned to death. Her father learned the news and rushed back from out of town. On the way, he encountered a mudslide and was buried with people and cars. She suffered the loss of both parents overnight. After taking leave to bury her parents, just as she was about to return home, she was knocked unconscious by Mrs. Mi with a bowl of sugar water eggs and sent to her cousin's bed. She was raped by him, but because her cousin was born infertile, Grandma didn't want her cousin to get divorced, so she sold her to her cousin's husband as a surrogate. She was placed under house arrest by her brother-in-law in a secret room. During the day, she was beaten and scolded by her cousin, and at night, she was bullied by her brother-in-law. It was not until she became pregnant that her cousin dared not hit her, fearing that she would have a miscarriage. My brother-in-law dare not torture her anymore. After giving birth to a child, she thought it was a son and she would be relieved. However, she didn't know that this family was afraid of being reported by her, so she sold her to a big mountain ditch and became a co-wife of 3 single brothers. She was beaten day and night and subjected to humiliation. Perhaps her fate was too difficult for the heavens to bear, giving her a glimmer of hope. One day, an old monk came to the village to beg alms. The village was poor, and the monk spent the morning wandering around without even getting a mouthful of water. She was kind-hearted. Seeing that the monk's mouth was dry and cracked, she gave him a bowl of water to drink, and secretly gave him a coarse black mantle that she had hidden. The old monk showed gratitude and rewarded her with a wooden bracelet. A few days later, she was beaten and her arm was scratched by a broken bowl. Blood flowed onto the wooden bracelet, unexpectedly opening up the Yuyang space. Half a month later, she used the ancient martial arts she learned in space to knock out 3 old bachelors, set them and their house on fire, and escaped from the nightmare-like village. After returning to S-City, she sneaked into her cousin's house late at night, opened the gas tank, and let her cousin's family die silently. A few days later, in the alley where Mrs. Mi went to buy groceries, she blocked her and was about to kill her when she accidentally saw a familiar figure at the entrance of the alley. She was shocked and ran away in a panic. That man is the lover she has been longing for and feeling guilty about for her whole life. He was so kind, so doting on her, loving her, and praising her. But she didn't protect herself well, she was stained by other men. She lost her innocence. Her body is dirty. My heart is also dirty. My hands are also dirty. She is not worthy of him. He is so clean, so good, he deserves a better woman. She was heartbroken and ran to the riverbank, jumping into the river and committing suicide. I just didn't expect that she died and came back to life. She's alive again. She's back again. Mi Xiaoxiao's eyes were filled with astonishment, and then she was ecstatic. She was reborn. Back at the age of 16, when all nightmares had not yet begun. Her mother is still alive, and her father is also alive. She is also alive. She is a family of 3 and still in good condition. No family is broken, no one is dead. Life is better than death. Great, that's really great. Mi Xiaoxiao wept with joy. This time, she swore that she would never be bullied by anyone again. Her eyes were fierce, and she forcefully removed the stick from Mrs. Mi's hand. She spoke coldly, "Don't hit me. I agree to give my mother's job to my cousin, but I have 3 conditions." "What? Do you dare to negotiate terms with me?" Mrs. Mi was still angry. "I'll beat you to death, you loser." She grabbed the enamel jar on the table and threw it at Mi's little head. Mi Xiaoxiao grabbed the enamel jar steadily with a small hand. Putting the cup into the hands of Wei Hongwan, who looked shocked, Mi Xiaoxiao turned around and picked at a loose brick in the corner of the hall. Mrs. Mi rushed over like a madman and said, "You're a killer. What are you doing?" End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Resistance. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Resistance. Mi didn't stop her small movements and casually moved a stool from the side to block in front of Mrs. Mi. Bending down and moving away the brick, revealing the black coal inside. Mrs. Mi's eyes narrowed. Mi Xiaoxiao raised the coal block in her hand and smiled, "Milk, if you don't want to negotiate terms, then I'll sue Uncle for stealing the coal block from the coal mine." "Milk, do you think it's a serious crime for Uncle and his team to steal national collective property? Was it sentenced to demotion? Do you still eat peanuts?" The little girl smiled sweetly. Mrs. Mi, however, was cold all over. She was clearly hiding well. How could she be discovered? You dead girl." Mrs. Mi trembled all over. "Don't forget that your surname is also Mi. If your uncle has something to do, our whole family won't be better off." "So what?" Mi Xiaoxiao sneered. "Anyway, Milk doesn't want me and my mother to have a good time. I'll be fair and let everyone have a hard time. We're a family, we have to share joys and sorrows." She smiled and said, "I think Uncle has a serious crime, and I'm afraid he won't be able to come back if he goes to prison. Aunt has been eating well and drinking well for so many years, raising young and charming people. Her red and white fingers are not exposed to the sunshine and spring water, and she has raised them white and tender. If they were to be released to work with Uncle, they would probably be remembered. Maybe my cousin can find you a mud-legged son. Law, and Uncle's family is even more amazing." "Shut up. What are the 3 conditions?" Mrs. Mi can't listen anymore. She is extremely afraid in her heart. If this loser really gets angry and goes to sue, then the Mi family will be finished. Her 2 sons and 2 daughters. Law, both of whom are unclean, have stolen some of the factory's goods to some extent. There are also some shady things hidden in the house, and if someone rushes in and rummages through boxes and cabinets, old lady Mi dare not think about it. Mi Xiaoxiao raised a finger and said, "Firstly, my mother's job was passed down to her after my grandmother passed away, so this job cannot be given to Mi Hongying for free. She has to buy it at the market price." Upon hearing this, Mrs. Mi opened her mouth and was about to scold. However, with a cold glance from Mi Xiaoxiao, she choked her back. "Secondly, our 3 rooms need to be separated. After the separation, we will move out of our old house, and Grandma will not be allowed to trouble my family in the future." Mrs. Mi's face was as dark as water. "And the 3rd one?" "This is the 3rd one. My dad's monthly salary and travel allowance add up to 75 yuan, while my mom's is 35 yuan. My parents have to pay you 80 yuan in monthly living expenses for 20 years, or at least more than 10,000 yuan. This doesn't include the money you usually take away from my parents. The 3 of us eat the worst and dress the worst at home. In 20 years, all 3 of us didn't use 1,000 yuan. So, you have to pay back my parents' salary to us. Even if you don't pay it all, you have to pay back half of it. You dream." Mrs. Mi couldn't help but reach out and tug at the loser's ear. "You loser, how dare you ask for money? You want my life. I can't afford to give you money. With so many mouths at home, don't eat or wear. There's not much money left in the house, no matter how much money you have, you'll have to use up. If you want to fight, Mi Xiaoxiao is not afraid. She tugged at the old lady's wrist, with no smile on her face. Milk, since that's the case, I'll go sue and have someone search your room to see if they can find the money. You're a picky eater, I'll beat you to death. Mrs. Mi picked up a chair and smashed it over. Mi Xiaoxiao quickly dodged Wei Hongwan and said, Milk, you can hit me. The harder you hit me, the more convincing I will be when I report your wicked mother.in.law for abusing my granddaughter and daughter.in.law. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Threats. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Threats. Mrs. Mi, who originally wanted to smash a chair, couldn't move in an instant. She fell silent. After a while, she said in a gloomy tone, I agree to buy a job at the market price and also agree to split the family. After dividing the family, your parents will give me retirement money, which is 30 yuan per month, not even a penny less. If you want money, I have a few leftovers in my hands, but after buying a job for your cousin, there is not much left. In one sentence, there is no money. Then I'll go sue you. Mom, let's go. Anyway, this family can't accommodate us. Mi Xiaoxiao didn't want to talk nonsense to Mrs. Mi and grabbed Wei Hongchuan's hand before leaving. Mi Lao was too anxious. Damn girl, you're going to sue us. If I die, I'll take your mother and daughter with me. Hee, I have another accusation against my grandmother, feudal superstition. You're a loser. Yeah, there's another charge of favoring men over women. Get out of here. Once you leave this door, you will no longer be a descendant of my Mi family. Mrs. Mi was so angry that she picked up a broom and threw it at Mi Xiaoxiao, who had been laughing happily all along. Goodbye then. Later, I will personally bring someone to catch Grandma. Grandma, please wait for me obediently. Smiling, Mi Xiaoxiao pulled Wei Hongwan and walked out the door. Not long after walking out, there came Mrs. Mi's furious voice from behind, Damn girl, come back to me and I promise you. Mi turned around a little and saw old lady Mi with a gloomy face. She chuckled and said, Milk, you are indeed wise. Spending some money to buy a safe place is very cost-effective. Milk, in the future, you will definitely thank me. Thank you for burning my mother's textile factory job and selling it to your precious granddaughter. Mi Xiaoxiao was in a good mood and pulled her mother back to her old house. We need to wait until the two families of uncle and uncle arrive to handle the separation. Let's divide the money first. Milk, give me the money first, and also the money for buying my cousin's job. We will give it together. Once we receive the money, my mother will go to the textile factory to handle the procedures for my cousin. After entering the house, Mi Xiaoxiao just went ahead and said. Mrs. Mi angrily said, What's the rush? The money matter. Let's wait for your two uncles to come back and handle the work procedures for Hongying first. Milk, you're not trying to stabilize me first, and then empty-handed lure the white wolf, are you? Mi saw through Mrs. Mi's trickery at a glance. She smiled and said, Take the money first, then get things done. Otherwise, my mother won't go through the formalities. Milk, if you don't want to, actually, it's okay. We won't force you either, it's just uncle and uncle stealing. I'm an honest person, and I can't stand anyone stealing the country's wool. Isn't this really forcing? They are all under threat. Mrs. Mi gritted her teeth in hatred, but dared not gamble. She was afraid that if this dead girl really came up with a tiger-like spirit and sued, not only would this big family have to finish it, but the house would probably not be able to be preserved. And her treasures. Mrs. Mi gritted her teeth and had to say, Milk doesn't have much money. When it comes to buying a job, I'll give you at most 200 milk, and 300 for dividing the household. No matter how much, there won't be any more. With a smile on her face, Mi Xiaoxiao stood up and said, Milk, you've been perfunctory with me and haven't had the intention of seriously discussing with me. So why call me and my mother back? Mom, let's go. Mi Xiaoxiao is angry. Pulling Wei Hongwan, she was about to leave in anger. Mrs. Mi made a trip to the ground and said, "Oh, what's wrong with my Mi family? This dead girl is committing the following crimes, being unfilial and disobedient, and will harm the whole family." End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Suspects that dad is not biological. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Suspects that dad is not biological. Do you want this set? Who is afraid of who? Mi Xiaoxiao raised her voice and shouted louder than Grandma Mi, "Everyone, come and watch the fun. My uncle stole it." Mrs. Mi was shocked and pale. She jumped up from the ground and pounced, covering her small mouth. "You dead girl, are you determined to be right with me? Milk, if you don't leave a way for me to survive in the third room, I can't do anything about it," Mi Xiaoxiao said pitifully as she opened her hand. Mrs. Mi was angry and said, "Okay, if you want to split up, then get out. From now on, your house will no longer be a descendant of my Mi family." She stomped her feet in pain and said, "At most 1,000 yuan, an extra penny, nothing more." "Okay, 1,000 is 1,000. Being able to extract 1,000 yuan from the hands of the malicious grandmother for family expenses, Mi Xiaoxiao is already very skilled. When Wei Hongwan held 1,000 yuan, she felt as if she was dreaming, shocked and uneasy in her heart, followed by joy and tears of joy. "Mom, I'll take this money first. You go to the textile factory and handle the transfer procedures for your cousin." With 1,000 yuan, Wei Hongwan no longer cares about work. She happily gave the money to her daughter and hurriedly left. In front of Mrs. Mi, Mi Xiaoxiao smiled and held the money, counting it one by one for 10 minutes. Finally, she finished counting and carefully divided the money into several parts, putting them in her cotton jacket pocket. Actually, it was placed in the space. After realizing her rebirth, she felt the existence of space and realized that space came with her. Her excited heart was trembling. In the future, with space, who else is she afraid of? She is not afraid of anyone. All conspiracies and schemes are floating clouds in the face of absolute strength. It's not even bullshit. Mrs. Mi glared at her maliciously and said, "I've taken the money. You hurry up and get out of my house. Tonight, don't want to stay overnight at my house. Hey, my parents paid me 20 years' salary, and you just gave me 1 year's salary. Nye, you're too cruel. My dad wasn't your biological child, right? Otherwise, why would you treat my dad as harsh as a stepmother?" Mi Xiaoxiao stared at her with a playful smile on her face. A hint of panic flashed in her eyes. Mi Xiaoxiao's heart skipped a beat. Is it true that her father is not Mrs. Mi's biological son? This question has been suspected by Mi Xiaoxiao in her past life. She and Mi Hongying, both granddaughters and grandmothers, are treated differently by their grandmother. One is the colorful clouds in the sky, held by her. One is the mud on the ground, which she stomped on with all her might. A few steps is not enough, we still need to stomp with our feet. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Space Shrinks. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Space Shrinks. Don't talk nonsense, your father was born to me in October. He was my own son, and as our neighbors know, I treated him harshly. It's not because I gave birth to him and injured my body, which made me miss the chance to have a daughter. Mrs. Mi muttered. Mi Xiaoxiao could hear a hint of guilt from her voice. However, whether her father is biological or not, let's not rush to investigate this matter for now. Because she has more important things to do. Milk, with such a large sum of money, I have to deposit it in the bank. I won't be at home with you when I go out. Mi Xiaoxiao took the money and patted her buttocks before leaving. Mrs. Mi stared at her back with a gloomy expression, this loser. When her 2 sons and daughter-in-law return tonight, she must bring back the money. Giving 1,000 yuan to the third family was as painful as gouging out her heart. Take the money back and give it another hard beating. They dare not bring up the matter of separation in the future. I want to split up, Ba. I think it's beautiful. In this lifetime, neither Wei Hongwan nor Mi Baogua can escape her control. They'd better spend their entire lives honestly earning money for her two eldest sons to support the family, otherwise they won't be able to kill them. There's also Mi Xiaoxiao, this dead girl. Tomorrow, she will go find an old widower who knows how to beat his wife and sell her, so that she won't have a good life. Mi Xiaoxiao could guess the dark and malicious thoughts of Mrs. Mi, but she didn't care. All conspiracies and schemes are fleeting in the face of strength. After happily leaving the Mi family, she found an empty corner and crawled into the space. However, her originally happy mood was dumbfounded when she saw a small piece of empty space with gray bumps. Xiaodai, are you there? How did the space turn out like this? Where is her food? Where is her fruit tree? Where is her ginseng? Why is it all gone? Master, I'm here. A small butterfly, the size of a fly, flickered and flew over. Mi Xiaoxiao was shocked and said, "Little butterfly, why have you become smaller?" Little butterfly burst into tears, tearing her heart and lungs. Woo-woo. In order to save her master, little butterfly has become smaller, and little spirit and little red have also become smaller. Xiao Ling, it's Lingquan well. Xiaohong is a red fruit tree. Mi Xiaoxiao looked at the Lingquan well, which was missing. She only saw a puddle as big as a bowl, with only a small bowl of Lingquan water left pitifully inside. Looking at the red fruit tree again, little red, which used to have lush flowers and abundant fruits, has now become a small sapling. Mi Xiaoxiao was heartbroken and said, "Not even a red fruit left." "Master, there are 20 red fruits in the warehouse that I picked and put in before saving you," said little butterfly. Mi Xiaoxiao suddenly choked up and said, "Xiaodai, thank you, and I'm sorry." Sorry. Because she is too sad, too painful, wanting to escape everything, wanting to die, but forgetting these little friends of hers, but they exhausted all their spiritual power to save her. It's all her fault. She is selfish. Master, don't be sad. Neither Xiaoling nor Xiaohong blame you. Really, Xiaoling Xiaohong said that when the master comes alive, they will definitely help upgrade the space, and then they will return to their original state. Okay, I'll go up the mountain tomorrow to search for spiritual power. Thinking of the mountains outside the county town, Mi Xiaoxiao decided to move out of the Mi family tonight and settle down with her mother. Tomorrow, she will stay in the mountains for a few days to help upgrade the space, and she will also learn ancient martial arts again. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Warehouse Materials. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Warehouse Materials. The space has shrunk, and the crops, fruits, and vegetables planted are gone. Fortunately, the warehouse is still there. The materials stored in the warehouse in the past life are still preserved. There are more than 1,200 jin of rice, more than 500 jin of flour, 300 jin of apples, 100 jin of dried red dates, as well as some of her clothes and daily necessities, dim sum, candy, several mantu, and a jar of pickles. In a corner of the warehouse, there are also more than 10 wooden boxes piled up, filled with antique jade artifacts, calligraphy and paintings, and small yellow croakers. Next to the box were several newly sewn bedding beds and a dozen pieces of fabric, with a small box placed on top of the fabric. The box contains over 3,000 yuan and a stack of various receipts. The box was taken by her from the Li family's secret room when she went to seek revenge. The bedding, fabric, money, and receipts were also dug out by her from the Li family. Mi Xiaoxiao looked at a pile of supplies with satisfaction, especially rice and white flour. With these grains, she would not go hungry with her parents after leaving the Mi family, and she was not afraid of not having enough food to eat. She took a teacup, scooped up half a cup of Lingquan water to drink, then took off her clothes and jumped into what used to be a large lake. Now it has become a small pond. Not long after, waves of pain hit me. She gritted her teeth in pain and trembled all over. With the pain, layers of dirt overflowed from the body, making it dark and smelly, but it was quickly purified by the lake water. The pain didn't subside until an hour later. Mi Xiaoxiao climbed ashore exhausted and put on her clothes. The originally fair skin is now crystal clear, as if shimmering with a circle of white light, dazzling and flawless. The little butterfly flew over and said happily, "Master, eat a red fruit quickly." On the little butterfly's body, carrying a red fruit the size of a fist, Mi Xiaoxiao was afraid of crushing it, so she quickly took a bite. Red fruit is a powerful fruit. Eating one can maintain strong energy for a month. When Mi Xiaoxiao swallows the fruit, she feels full of energy and energy all over her body. She suddenly felt at ease. Carrying a small cloth bag, he left the space and walked towards the Housing Management Bureau. If we split up at night, Mrs. Mi will definitely drive her and her mother out. She needs to buy a house first. Otherwise, she and her mother would have to stay overnight on the streets if she was kicked out at night without a letter of introduction. The Housing Management Bureau is not far away, it only takes over 20 minutes to get there. The person who received her was a young man. The man stared at her in amazement for a while before awkwardly laughing. "Comrade, hello, are you here to rent a house?" "No, I'm here to buy a house. I want to ask if there is a small courtyard near the state-owned restaurant for sale." Mi Xiaoxiao said with a stern expression, feeling a bit displeased. Knowing that he had just lost his composure and caused displeasure among his female comrades, Lu Mingyuan touched his nose and blushed as he said, "Yes, there are 2 adjacent courtyards across an alley from the state-owned restaurant that need to be sold. However, one of the landlords doesn't want money, only food and fine grain. In the past 7 years, there was a national food shortage and supply was in short supply. Not to mention fine grains, it's just coarse grains. Supply and marketing cooperatives often sell out of stock, and many workers queue up at 4 a.m. to buy grain in order to have food. If they go late, they won't be able to buy it, and the whole family will have to go hungry. In this era, you have food that can be sold for money. But if you have money, you may not be able to buy food. Especially fine grains. Grain is life. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Viewing Houses. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Viewing Houses. Mi Xiaoxiao looked embarrassed and said, "My family has a large population of over 20 people, and we have over 200 kilograms of fine grain per month. If the house is good but there is not enough fine grain, I can still borrow it from relatives." "Okay, then I'll take you to see the house now." Lu Mingyuan walked out the door and remembered something before turning to ask her, "Can you ride a bicycle?" Yes. In her past life, after going to the countryside, Yan Junwei taught her and even gave her a women's bicycle to ride during the engagement. Lu Ming said from afar, "That alley is far from here. You are a lesbian and it's not convenient for you to take my bike. I'll go borrow a bicycle for you, and we'll ride it over." "Okay, thank you." "You're welcome, my name is Lu Mingyuan. Just call me Comrade Lu." "My name is Mi Xiaoxiao, you call me Comrade Mi." "Comrade Mi, please wait a moment, I will be back soon." Lu Mingyuan went for a moment before returning with a car key. Mi Xiaoxiao rode his bike and followed behind him. Half an hour later, the two of them stopped in front of a small courtyard door. "Comrade Mi, this is it." "Wait a moment, I'll knock on the door." Lu Mingyuan parked his bike and knocked on the door. After knocking for a while, someone came to open the door and said, "Who is that?" "Aunt Zhang, it's me, Lu Mingyuan from the Housing Management Bureau." "Oh, it's Mr. Lu, please come in." "Oh, who is this little girl?" "She's really beautiful." The old lady who opened the door was kind, neat, and friendly, looking very compatible. Aunt Zhang, she is Comrade Mi, coming to see your house. Hello Auntie, my name is Mi Xiaoxiao and I'm here to buy a house. Can I come in and take a look? Said Mi Xiaoxiao with a smile. Yes, I'm sure I can. My yard is well maintained and clean. If it weren't for my son being transferred to Beijing and my daughter.in-law giving birth to a little grandson for me, I wouldn't have been willing to leave S City. I've lived in this yard for over a decade, and my relationship is deep. The old lady spoke while leading Mi Xiaoxiao into the hospital. The yard is not large, with 3 main rooms and 2 side rooms, all of which are large blue brick houses. The yard is also neatly tidied up, and the ground is clean, all paved with broken bricks. The walls of the courtyard are also made of broken bricks, which are very sturdy. Aunt Zhang explained, when my father.in-law was alive, he worked at a brick factory. He bought these broken bricks from the factory. I have courtyards in front and behind my house. The front yard is small, so I didn't plant vegetables. I only planted 3 apple trees. In autumn, I can't finish eating apples and can still dry them in the sun. I keep them for the Chinese New Year's Tooth Festival. There is also a well at home, which is convenient for drinking, washing clothes, and not having to get up early to jump into the alley. There is also a wooden shed built in the southwest corner to pile firewood, so I'm not afraid of getting wet even if it rains. The kitchen is in the east wing room, with a large stove. The old man and I are going to Beijing, and we don't plan to take this iron pot with us. If you want it, we'll leave it for you. We'll pay according to the price, no tickets. I also have a stove, and there are plenty of coal balls left, all paid according to the price. In the middle of the main room is the main room, and the east and west rooms are for housing. The old man and I live in the east room, while the west room is for my son and daughter.in-law. He and his wife are not at home, and I often come in to clean it up. Speaking, he led Mi Xiaoxiao into the western room. The room is very large, about 20 square meters, with 36 legs of furniture and a sewing machine inside. The old lady said, this furniture and sewing machine were bought by my son when he married his wife. It hasn't been used for many years and looks like new. My son said it and sold it at a discounted price. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Buy it now. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Buy it now. Does this sewing machine also sell? Mi stared at the sewing machine with bright eyes. Her mother had been wanting to buy a sewing machine for a long time, but Mrs. Mi didn't give her money. Her mother begged for more than 10 years, but even to her death, she couldn't buy a sewing machine. If this sewing machine sells, the old lady said helplessly, the train doesn't allow sewing machines, so we can only sell them. Furniture and sewing machines are all heavy items that need to be transported to Beijing by truck. The journey is long and the shipping cost is even more expensive than buying a sewing machine. Her son said he didn't want anything at home and sold it at a discounted price. After looking at the house, the old lady led Mi Xiaoxiao to the backyard. The backyard is larger than the front yard, with more than 10 rows of vegetable fields and a corner built with broken bricks for a toilet and a chicken coop. The old lady said, when my mother.in-law was alive, she was a clean person and had a cleanliness fetish. She paved all the broken bricks in this vegetable garden, and even when it rained, she would pick vegetables and use the toilet without walking in the mud. That chicken coop was made by my old man after my mother.in-law passed away. My mother.in-law disliked the taste of raising chickens and used to not allow them to be raised. When we ate eggs at home, we relied on buying them. In the chicken shed, there are also 2 chickens raised. If you want to raise more, the street office won't allow it either. A family can only raise 2 at most. This courtyard, front and back, inside and outside, is clean and tidy. Mi Xiaoxiao immediately took a liking to it. I really like it. However, the housing prices are too high. The old lady is asking for 1,600 kilograms of fine grains, furniture, sewing machines, iron pots, kettles, and other items, priced at 180 yuan. Grain and money, even small rice, can be taken out, but after taking it, she only has about 100 pounds of fine grain left, and this price is 10% higher than the market price. Mi Xiaoxiao looked puzzled and said, "Auntie, this price is a bit high. With so many fine grains, I can't take them out at once. Can you think it's even cheaper?" "Comrade Mi, my yard is the best repaired in this alley. You can't see such a neat yard anywhere you go. Just talk about these broken bricks on the ground, which my father-in-law spent several tens of yuan to buy back then, as well as iron pots, stoves, sewing machines, and kettles. In the supply and marketing society, it's difficult to buy tickets even if you have them. I calculate it's cheap for you, but I don't want your tickets. These bowls, chopsticks, ladles, pots, and firewood are all for free. Comrade Mi, think about it carefully. The old lady is on a fixed price, even 1 or 2 meters are not a big deal." However, what she was saying was also true. Iron pots, stoves, and sewing machines were in high demand and couldn't be bought without tickets. And this ticket was very difficult to deal with. The old lady gave her an 80% discount, and she didn't want the ticket yet. Mi Xiaoxiao took a big advantage. And these things are also essential items for Mi Xiaoxiao. Mi Xiaoxiao pitifully said, "Auntie, I really can't take out over 1,000 pounds of fine grain. How about, you see, I'll give you half of the fine grain and the other half money." This. Aunt Zhang hesitated. "My daughter-in-law gave birth 3 days ago, and my son took a leave of absence to wait at home for 3 days before going to work. My daughter-in-law and grandson were left unattended at home, so my son called her twice to urge the elderly couple to hurry over. But she needs a lot of fine grain, the house won't sell for a while, and she can't leave." At this moment, Lu Mingyuan spoke up and advised her, "Aunt Zhang, 1,600 kilograms of fine grain is not a small quantity, and no one in S City can take it out. Besides, with so much grain, if you and the master carry the train, they will inevitably be targeted. It's better to take half of the grain and half of the money, and the road will be safer." Aunt Zhang, if struck by lightning, yes, over 1,000 kilograms of fine grain. Who would have seen it but wouldn't be jealous? What if someone catches their eye and kills and robs food? Aunt Zhang's hair stood up all over her body. She said decisively, "Okay, I need 500 pounds of fine grain and an additional 360 yuan. Supply and Marketing Cooperative, 1 kilogram of fine grain is only 1.6 cents, but we need a grain ticket and a grain purchase book. Without a grain ticket and a grain purchase book, the price will double. Aunt Zhang wants 360 yuan, but she doesn't want much. This courtyard, so well repaired, is worth the price." End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Mi Xiaoxiao, what are you going crazy about? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Mi Xiaoxiao, what are you going crazy about? Mi Xiaoxiao breathed a sigh of relief and smiled, "Okay, I'll go get the grain and money now, and then we'll transfer ownership to the Housing Management Bureau. However, Auntie, I have a condition." "What conditions, please tell me." "The house is finally going to be sold, and the old lady is also happy. I bought a house and my mother and I will move in tonight. However, don't worry, we won't move your belongings. You and the master can move out within 5 days." Aunt Zhang's face softened a bit and she said, "Miss, if we can transfer ownership in the morning, the old man and I will leave in the afternoon. This house will be yours from now on, and you can move in any time." Her son is so anxious that she dares not delay. When she receives food and money, she immediately leaves, and she has already packed her luggage. She and the old man have already inquired about it. There is a train to Beijing in the evening, which will leave today and arrive in Beijing tomorrow night. Mi Xiaoxiao looked at Lu Mingyuan and said, "Comrade Lu, you worked hard today. I'll go borrow grain and money now. Later, I'll trouble you to take me and Auntie to handle the transfer procedures. Okay, then I'll wait for you here. As a staff member of the Housing Management Office, Lu Mingyuan will stay here as a witness. This is his job. Mi Xiaoxiao left for an hour before pulling a cart of grain back, with 3 bags of rice and 2 bags of white flour. Afterwards, a few people went to the Housing Management Office to complete the transfer procedures. In order to prevent Mrs. Mi from climbing over the house under her father's name in the future, Mi Xiaoxiao did not hesitate to register the house under her own name. After receiving Fong Ben, Mi Xiaoxiao happily gave the money to Aunt Zhang, with a total of 360 yuan for the room and 180 yuan for the items. Aunt Zhang also gave her a key to the door. At noon, Mi Xiaoxiao invited Lu Mingyuan and Mrs. Zhang to a state-owned restaurant to thank him. Comrade Lu has helped me so much today, and I want to thank you well. Later, you can order more meat and vegetables, and let's have a good meal. It's like celebrating that I bought a house and my parents are going to Beijing to reunite with their son and daughter. Law's family. Upon hearing this, Aunt Zhang, who was originally feeling a bit sad, became happy and said, "Yes, the old man and I are finally going to reunite with my son, daughter. Law, and grandson's family. I am finally going to see my grandson." Lu Mingyuan didn't hesitate and readily agreed. 4 people happily had a meal at a state-owned restaurant. After dinner, Lu Mingyuan looked at Mi Xiaoxiao and said, "Comrade Mi, I'm going to work. If you have anything to do in the future, you can come find me. As long as I can help you, I will help you." "Thank you, Comrade Lu, goodbye." Mi Xiaoxiao is still very grateful to him. Aunt Zhang and Grandpa Zhang were in a hurry to go back and tidy up, and also bid farewell to Mi Xiaoxiao and leave. After they left, Mi Xiaoxiao took out her notebook and looked at her name on it, her excited eyes moist. Great, on her first day of rebirth, she bought a house. She finally has her own house. She no longer needs to worry about not having a place to live with her mother tonight. Mi Xiaoxiao was excited for a while, then carrying a template and humming a song, happily returned to the Mi family. As soon as I entered the house, I saw my mother washing clothes. It was a big basin full of clothes from all the people in the Mi family. Mi's small gaze suddenly made her feel cold. She walked over and grabbed her mother, angrily saying, "Mom, they are all separated. What clothes are you going to wash them? They are not without hands. Let's go, let's enter the house." Pulling Mom into the room. "Mi Xiaoxiao, what are you going crazy about? Aunt San doesn't wash clothes. What do you want my parents to wear for work tomorrow?" Mi Hongying heard a voice in the room and angrily rushed out of the east room, pointing at Mi Xiaoxiao and cursing loudly. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. If you refuse, you will die. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. If you refuse, you will die. Mi Xiaoxiao stared at her with a cold look like a knife in her eyes. You've said it's your parents' clothes. You, as a daughter, don't wash them. Let my mother wash them. My mother is not your domestic servant. You. Mi Hong blushed with a proud expression. Grandma told me that all the household chores are done by Aunt San. Aunt San doesn't wash clothes, so I'll go tell Grandma to see if Grandma doesn't kill you. We're all going to split up. This household chores belong to your family, not mine. Mi Xiaoxiao pulled Wei Hongwan and sat down on the upper and lower bunks. These upper and lower bunks are the beds for their mother and daughter. The Mi family's house is large, with 3 bedrooms and 1 living room. The 2 largest rooms are separated by 2 small rooms each. The couple in the big room lives in 1 room with their 3 sons, while the couple in the second room lives in 1 room with their 2 sons and 2 daughters. The remaining east room is not separated and is occupied by Mi Laotai and Mi Hongying. The 3-bedroom mother and daughter have no rooms and can only live in the main room. Mi Hong gritted her teeth and rushed into the east room, shouting loudly, "Grandma, Aunt San doesn't wash clothes. It's already afternoon, and if we don't do it again, we won't be able to do it tomorrow. My parents, uncle and aunt won't be able to change their factory uniforms. You lazybones, do you still need my old lady to come and invite me to do some laundry? Mrs. Mi rushed out and pointed at Wei Hongchuan's nose, cursing, lazybones, washing a few clothes can still tire you out. If you don't work anymore, will you still want to eat and drink for free at my Mi's house? Mom, I've been paying my monthly salary. When did I end up eating and drinking for free? Wei Hongwan was angry. She had just sold her job to Mi Hongying this morning, but in the afternoon, her mother-in-law despised her for eating idle food. Fortunately, she split up at night, otherwise she wouldn't have been rubbed to death by her mother-in-law in the future. She angrily said, I'm eating and drinking for free. The money that big brother and sister-in-law have paid is not as much as me and Baogua. Are they also eating and drinking for free? They go to work and don't interfere with household chores. I go to work and do all the household chores. Mom, when you say I eat and drink for free, won't your conscience hurt? Do you deserve my years of respect and filial piety? At least I'll call you Mom. You've been biased for so many years, and I haven't said anything. But with just one word from you, you want to erase my decades of hard work, and I'm not convinced. If you don't agree, you'll die. Mrs. Mi roared angrily. The people who have always allowed her to pinch and flatten her are actually resisting her one by one. What, they want to turn the world around? Dreaming. You scumbag, why don't you just do more work? Anyway, you can still tire yourself out. Alright, if you don't do it anymore, and don't even think about eating. In Mrs. Mi's hands, she not only held the family's money, but also the family's food and receipts. Without food vouchers, she wanted to see what these two cheap hooves could eat and drink just because they had money. Mrs. Mi angrily returned to her room. She wanted to beat them up with a rolling pin just like before, but they were holding the handles of their two sons in their hands, so she didn't dare to push them any harder. Everything will be discussed when the two sons come back. Mi Xiaoxiao glanced at the proud Mi Hongying, chuckled, and pulled Wei Hongwan out. Wei Hongwan said anxiously, Xiaoxiao, our family is divided. Your milk won't share our food and food vouchers. Why don't we go to your uncle's house and stay for a while? Today is only the 3rd day of the winter month, and if you want to buy grain, you will have to wait for more than 20 days. What have their mother and daughter been eating these past 20 days? Wei Hongwan is worried. End of this chapter.